How do we tame our gremlin? We all have a gremlin.
It's very true.
What is a gremlin? I mean, like a creature gremlin, like a.
No.
How do you explain it?
No, your gremlin is the monster of the mind. Okay? You're familiar with it.
I'm definitely familiar with it.
Yeah, everybody is. It's that part of you that is really out to eat your lunch. It's out to squelch the vibrant thing that you really are. With various names applied to that other thing. Soul, prana, ray, chi, ki, the primordial vibration. You can't circle it with a word at all, but it's in there. In one book, I called it life. One book, I called it, what else? True love. So the gremlin taming method is very powerful, but it's not about the gremlin. It's really not. In the same way that a sculpture is not about the stone that ends up on the floor. The method is about how to get a sliver of light between who you are on the inside and all of that stuff, all that chatter, all those preconceived notions about who you are and about how the world works. It's just to see that. And that alone is very, very freeing. At that point, when you start to witness that goings on, there's just a beautiful thing that starts to happen. I mean, it's a sense of freedom. It's really a beautiful, beautiful thing.
So what is a gremlin if you were to describe it in one sentence?
All I can say is it's the enemy out to really get you, out to squelch.
So your inner narrative.
It's the one who issues forth that inner narrative. For example, there are a lot of therapists that use my method and a lot of, life coaches that do. And so often there is a misunderstanding. They'll think, well, your gremlin, it's like when you said earlier, which gremlin? They'll think, well, your gremlin is your negative past experiences, or your gremlin is your fears, or your gremlin is whatever, your put downs. Your gremlin is not any of those things. Your gremlin is that force that issues them forward.
Got it.
And it exists between it. That ultimate duality is within every human I've ever encountered.
And you've encountered a lot. You've been a therapist for
50 years.
50 years.
This is my 50th year.
Yeah. You look great, man.
Well, thank you very much.
You were out just doing dips in the gym across the way right before.
I was just bored.
He's doing dips in the gym. I mean, you got to get at it. So
listen, I know young guys aren't out there doing dips when they're bored. They got to, take after you.
My first set, we shouldn't go into this.
No, I love it.
First set, I do 60.
Holy Christ!
Yeah,
damn.
and I do them right.
I believe it.
And I'm 78.
You kicked your gremlin's ass.
You're 78? Wow.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that the whole deal about gremlin timing, it's one of the reasons I really love working out. It's been a hobby of mine since I was 15, it's gremlin timing on the spot. It really is.
Yeah,
when you start to just see the limits, you don't have to work against them. You don't have to have positive affirmations. Once you see how crazy that stuff is, there's a natural correction that starts to occur.
Yeah, not to go on like the full fitness tangent, but I will say in my life when I'm having the hardest time, it's usually times when I'm not taking care of myself physically.
Yeah.
I'm not getting out there and getting that exercise in.
Well, it's amazing the number of people who don't attend to that. If I'm working with a client, no matter what we're working on, if they're not taking care of their body, it's in there that you have every experience you have in this life. Really. I mean, events occur around you, but your experience of all those events happens within the boundary defined by your skin. So you got to keep this instrument tuned and toned, but you also have to practice this method. Mm-hmm.
When did you discover that everyone has this one thing in them and it was something that you wanted to write about?
Before you were born. 1973 or 4.
Okay.
And it's a long story how it happened, but once it happened for me, it changed everything I was doing with clients, with families, with individuals, because I saw that no matter what people present with, whether it's anxiety or or an incestuous relationship that they had, or the death of a loved one. That's like a basket of fruit people walk in with. There's all this stuff, okay? But what I'm interested in is the one carrying the basket. And ultimately, it doesn't mean I don't help folks deal with issues, but ultimately it gets down to that inner duality. Because once you take care of how you're contributing to your own misery, it's amazing. Circumstances are important. You're successful. I'm successful because we know how to move props and players around to make a success in this life. But the inner game is a whole separate thing. And the inner game term is not mine, it's Tim Galway's. But it's the key. And people are not taught how to do that. It's not taught anywhere that I know about.
I was talking to somebody today that's in a high stress situation, and what I realized when I was talking to them is it's not their fault necessarily that they're not able to deal with the high stress situation. Either maybe they lack a little experience, but also and I started thinking about me in that situation who's been through a couple of these types of things in
Right.
business multiple times. And I've just learned how to talk to myself in a way in these situations that doesn't make it stressful for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
It's like, okay, it's just like a puzzle. I'm like, all right, I'm going to move this piece and that piece. But for most people that haven't been in these scenarios, they don't know how to talk themselves through it and put themselves in a situation where they can find success even in those situations.
that's right. And that's what the method is all about.
So if someone's out there and they're listening and they feel like they're carrying a huge basket of fruit, what are some tangible tips that they can use?
Very tangible.
Okay.
Okay. First thing is get a copy of Taming Your Gremlin.
Yes, get a copy of it. I have one, you guys.
Because the method is very precise in there. But one of the things that folks can do immediately, and it's the thing I get the most emails about and phone calls about, is folks saying, I don't get the skin thing. And what I mean by that is, as weird as this sounds, this is just one tip. Staying aware of the surface of your skin, which is a very sensitive organ. It's very sensitive. It's like a vibrating boundary. Okay. So it's not just an organ, it's a boundary. And every experience you have in this life ultimately occurs in there, as I was saying earlier. So that tip, coupled with a lot of people talking about breathing nowadays, the importance of belly breathing, taking in all of the air that you want, exhaling fully, that's important. But what's more important, or as important, is to recognize your breathing is not just a regulator of your internal experience. It's an indicator. When it gets shallow, it's telling you, when you cut off your body, your breathing gets shallow, your awareness becomes concentrated in your head, in your intellect. Not a bad place, but some terrible neighborhoods. And even if all you do is spend too much time up there, you're going to get bummed out and anxious. So when your breathing gets shallow, it's important to note and ask, what's going on? Am I doing some constructive thinking, like you were saying, moving props and players around? Am I scaring the hell out of myself? Am I miring myself in regret? Anything, beating the hell out of myself? And then once you notice that, this sounds odd, but what I have people do is accentuate it. In other words, if you're scaring yourself, scare yourself big time.
So
Like,
give us an example.
Is it
so-
like fear setting in a way where it's like you talk to yourself about how much worse it could be or how like kind of like that?
That's a piece of it, Michael, but it's not the whole enchilada. That's part of it. So somebody's scaring themselves that they're going to be left or abandoned by a lover, or somebody's going to die, or they're going to lose their job. That could really happen. But what I have people do firstly is accentuate the horror movie. I'm not only going to lose my job, I don't know, my partner's going to leave me. I'm going to end up old and alone and get eaten by rats, whatever. But it's not just accentuating that. That's why I said it's close but no enchilada, the feeling in their body. Have them accentuate it. Because even if the horror movie is not absurd, what will become absurd every time is I'm sitting here jabbing my own thumb in my own eye. That's really how I discovered the method. But it's like, there's an absurdity there. When the natural you spots that, there's a natural correction that starts to occur in the same way that you learn to walk. You didn't know anything about kinesiology, physiology. You learned If you lean too far to the left, you bumped your head, so you start to straighten up. Same thing happens here. You start to really see what you're doing to yourself. This is the key. In the moment that you're doing it to yourself, it's not about insight, it's about awareness in the moment. There's a natural correction that starts to occur. So, with the method, it's very important that people practice.
So you basically scare the shit out of yourself and give yourself the worst possible case scenario so your body reacts to it.
And you accentuate what your body's
You
doing.
tighten it.
Yeah. So if, for example, you're breathing shallow, you make it shallower. If notice your head's going down, you really pull it down. Okay.
And so what does that do to the brain though?
I don't have any idea what it does to the brain. I just know there's a natural correction that occurs
And
there.
so it's almost like you're hyper self-aware.
Hyper self-aware.
It almost is like your body knows this is not a natural state of being, so why are you putting yourself in that state of
Yeah.
being, right? It's like you're putting yourself unnaturally through suffering that you don't need to suffer through.
That's right. There's an insight that comes. I mean, we're not dummies. We see, my God, this is crazy, what I'm doing to myself. But there's also awareness. Awareness, experience has its own language, and it's not the language of the mind. It's the difference between really knowing something and knowing about it.
It's
You
very
know,
primal in a way. Like animals don't run around suffering all the time, right? We
as far as
do.
I know,
Yeah, right.
yeah,
They just go through being in animals, and obviously they have survival instincts and things that they need to know, but they're
sure.
not constantly in this frantic state of mind like we are as humans.
No, it's kind of like what's next. I
Yeah.
mean, I assume I'm not an
No, I
animal
watch
like
our
that. Not
chihuahuas
that
and like,
kind.
these guys don't know what's going on there, you know.
What's an example of something that you can pinpoint of someone that maybe was molested or experienced incest or rape or something that was so traumatic where you saw something shift with the Gremlin method?
Gosh, there've been so many. I mean, sometimes the- I end up taking people back, not always, but many times I take people back into that experience.
Okay.
Okay. I help them get really centered and then very slowly take them back into that experience. And if that is too scary for them, I mean, I'm right there connecting with them. If that's too scary, if I see them starting to tense, I'll take and have them do something like be on the ceiling witnessing what happened. But I want them to re experience some of the feeling because that's the way you move through it. The, the way out is through always. That's just the way it is. You can form an insight about what's going on and decide to see it differently. And on a scale of 0 to 10, that's worth about a 3. But when you really dive into the experience and start seeing the effect that from that experience, what you've started doing to yourself, that's when that natural change starts to occur. I had to, when I first wrote Taming Your Gremlin, I wanted to come up with a term for it. And so I called it the Zen Theory of Change, which simply stated is I free myself from all this crap, not by trying to free myself. It's never worked for anybody long term. I free myself by really noticing how I'm imprisoning myself in the very moment that I'm imprisoning myself. That's the key. I'm aware of rushing a little bit here, and
No, no.
I really don't want to.
No,
Yeah.
you're not at all. This is really good.
Okay.
When
Yeah.
so when you talk to, I mean, 50 years doing this, are there some common themes or elements or things that people just inherently need to work through all the time that you're like, "Hey, this is something that 95% of the people you've seen can start working on today?"
That's a great question. Yes. Typically, what brings people to me, well, what brings them to me really is they want to enjoy their lives and experience some simple peace and contentment. But typically, if you really look closely, it's damn near always related to a loss or the threat of a loss, whether it's of a person, whether it's of self esteem, whether it's of a job, some kind of loss,
Money, whatever.
whatever. Yeah. Yeah. Especially in this economy, a
Sure.
lot of people are scared, really scared. Uh, and that's, if you trace it back, typically that's what folks are afraid of. And there's some legitimate concerns. But if you can take care of how and some negative stuff goes down. You're gonna feel stressed. That's just the way it is. But if you take care of how you contribute to that and how you're prolonging it, if you can spot that, it's amazing how it really minimizes the other.
So it could be loss of anything. It could be loss of status. It could be loss of money, loss of a job, loss of like you're saying just loss in general is what
Lo-
most people fear.
Loss of how you think of yourself, a self concept about who you think you are, who you think you're supposed to be.
Huh.
Loss of your looks, loss of your,
Oh, sure. Try
years.
aging.
Yeah.
Try baldness.
Listen, man, if I
You
look
know?
like you at 78, I'm gonna be good. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
happy.
I'm telling you, the stuff that we get attached to, and I'm not immune to any of this. I'm no master of the process. I'm just a real sincere student, because it's been so beneficial in my life, transformative. Uh, but you got to keep practicing because the benefits, es- everything I'm saying to you is from my own experience. The benefits keep unfolding. It's not just you attain a static state of bliss and harmony or anything, but you start having not only more and more moments of simple peace and contentment, but your moments get richer. I'm amazed constantly by this thing.
What is the foreground of our minds? This is a question from my team to you.
Yeah.
They want to know what that means.
Oh, okay. At any point in time, or if you're at any point in time, if you're awake and you're feeling good, you have a sharp foreground and a fuzzy background. Like right now, Michael, you're my foreground.
Got it.
Now I'm shifting, you're my foreground. But that foreground is always in one of three zones. This is important, and that's a great question. This is key for people listening or watching. This will really help. That foreground is always either from your skin in, focal point of that is your breathing, your body, from your skin in, okay? Or what's going on in your immediate surroundings, what you can actually pick up with your senses,
Okay.
your sensory receptors. As long as the foreground of your experience is here or here, you're grounded in the present.
Okay.
Okay, now the method is not about being here now all the time, but it is about establishing the here and now as your home and coming home several times an hour, because there's a third realm, the world of mind. So if right now, I mean, I'm really making a bit. I see you looking at me, Lauren. So and I like that. What's also true is I'm making up world of mind. I'm making up you're listening to me. I really don't have a clue.
Right.
But if I imagined you were angry with me, or if Michael was, for God's sake, then my entire behavior would change. Well, what happens is based on past experiences, many times we tend to contaminate the present with the past and fears about the future.
Huh.
And so it's the method doesn't teach you anything in terms of that, except notice what you're doing. Because if you do that without knowing you're doing it, that's what's called a neuroses.
So
It's like if somebody, maybe they've had a past poor relationship where somebody cheated on them,
Sure.
and then they come into a new one and they're in that relationship and they're putting that past and the behavior of that old partner on this relationship. You're going to have a completely different relationship as if you weren't doing that.
It happens all the
Of
time.
course, of course.
Yeah. Any insecurity.
Or the past behavior of parents or relatives of things you knew as a child, if you're bringing that into your present relationships or present partnerships or whatever it is.
Okay. So the method is existential and phenomenological. In other words, instead of saying, well, let's figure all that out, what I want you to do is become very aware of when you're doing that to yourself, because that kicks into play that Zen theory of change. I free myself by simply noticing how I'm imprisoning myself in the very moment in which I'm doing it. Because it's not a virus. It's not a virus. You're doing it.
So what you're saying is a lot of negative experiences we're actually creating for ourselves based on past experiences.
A lot, not all. But what is true is we are the ones that tend to prolong them.
Right.
Okay, so you sneer at me
Okay.
or throw me out of the room or tell me that was the worst interview you ever had or whatever it was, okay? So that hurts. I don't like hearing that. That's a natural fight or flight reaction. My breathing gets shallow, I tense, my trapezius gets tight, my knuckles go white, all of that stuff. But what I do with that makes all the difference. If I start chewing on it like bubble gum, I can make myself miserable and people do this for hours, for days.
For
Do you think
years.
that there's people though that are addicted to the chaos?
Oh, absolutely.
And so what do you do with that? Because
Same
I
thing.
can think of people that I actually believe like to live in that state.
That's right. My job is not to change anybody.
Right.
My job is to get them to choice with it by helping,
Make them
basically,
aware.
in a gentle, loving way, put their face in it. Look at what you're doing to yourself, and there's a natural correction that starts to occur from that.
Well,
How-
I think about this even like we have a lot of single friends that are dating, right?
Uh-huh,
And they're struggling
sure.
in the date. Like it's two worlds. Some of our friends, no problem, constantly, having a great time. Other constant problem. You could take them similar people, but at some point there's a reason you're having problems or a reason you're having success, and it's most likely not external, it's internal, right?
Yep.
It's something that you're doing. It's just recognizing what are those things that are working for you and what are working against you.
Well, the latter is the most important.
Okay.
Is because if you can take away, if you can really start noticing how you're getting in your own way, the sequel is a masterclass. Well, I think maybe it's the subtitle here. Yeah, it's a surprisingly simple method for getting out of your own way. So the main thing is not so much to notice the positive stuff. That's nice. What are the things I'm doing that's right? But to really notice the fears. Fears are poison, okay? Fears, guilt, putting yourself down, miring yourself in regret. I'm not opposed to anger. I think it handled properly, it changes relationships for the better many times. It gets things done. But clinging to a resentment is like acid in a container. It eats the person holding on to it, which plays into what you were saying about people who just really like that drama, you know?
Yeah, they're addicted to the chaos. Well,
Mhm.
I would love to do like a little exercise with Michael and I.
Well,
Sure.
I like this method
I
because
like that.
so many people, a lot of these emotions you're talking about, people are taught to turn away from them,
Exactly.
right? And if you turn,
And I'm saying let's dive into them.
So let's do an exercise.
Okay.
What's something that you think that you can work on? And if you don't have something, I have something for you.
Okay. Well, that's all right.
I
First, let's ask
there's,
Michael.
There's a million things I can work on.
something recently.
Say again, there's a million things I can work on.
There's a million things I can work on.
Now say it and put space between those words.
There is a million things I can work on.
Now,
I love that. I'm gonna play
stay
that.
Stay with it just a minute, just one more time, and really feel each word as you say it to me.
No, there is a million things I can work on.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I know.
See? Okay, now call me by name. Say Rick.
Rick, there are a million things that I can work on.
Tell Lauren. Slowly.
Lauren, there are a million things that I can work on.
So pick one. Pick one. Don't you pick. I
No.
want Michael to pick.
I can be better with my delivery and not as harsh. I not as harsh with my delivery. It comes from
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
When you hear because or it comes from, go ahead and say it again.
I can be better with my delivery. I could improve it.
Very good. Say it one more time.
I could be better with my delivery. I could improve it.
Now call Lauren by name and say, I can be better.
This is like an
Lauren,
orgasm.
I can be better.
See what it feels like to say Lauren. And I don't want you to fake this.
No, I'm not. Lauren,
Oh.
I could be better.
Yeah. Now see what it feels like slowly. Let's slow down a little bit just to say to Lauren, I will be better.
Lauren, don't film me.
Okay.
No, wait a minute.
Lauren, I will be better.
So on a scale of 0 to 10, well, tell me what the experience is in the center of your chest as you say that, and say it one more time.
In a way, it's actually kind of relieving, and I felt a little hot actually saying it.
Right.
It's interesting.
More alive, actually. Not that you're weren't alive
Not that I'm
before.
dead inside, but yeah.
Yeah. But the idea is to feel to be fully human, to feel everything that comes up fully.
Yeah, sweating a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. So what's scary about that?
I don't know. I think that, I grew up in a household that was very matter of fact, "This is the delivery, this is the problem, this is the solution," type. There wasn't a like, and I think Lauren grew up in a different kind of household where there was a lot of words of affirmation, and that is one of her love languages. For
Uh-huh.
me, I don't wanna say I don't need it, but it's not something I prioritize primarily probably because I was in a and listen, I grew up in a I have no complaints, grew up in a great
No,
household.
I know.
But it was very much like, "That's good, good job, but, like, that's also expected." Or like, "Okay, great, but keep" you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
Right? And I think it served me in some ways,
Damn right.
but it's also probably hindered relationships at times, even in, my company, like it's my biggest feedback even as a manager is would love a little more praise and not so much about the critique. Or and I actually we just did that. What was the show we just did? We're about projectors, and it was saying that um basically what they say is someone like myself is able to shine a light onto people, but then see the shadows of where there's room for improvement. And I spend too much time on that and not enough time on the acknowledgement of
The
the person.
self-awareness.
Until now.
Until now, yeah.
So
Yeah.
say again, until now,
Until now. Until now,
I
I have had my delivery off, but I am going to fix it.
okay, the main part is for you to really notice that until now, that's been true. So anytime now that because now and I know this is not the first time, Michael, but you'll notice when you're doing that, right? And it's not a bad
It's
thing.
about correcting it's about acknowledging it when it's happening.
Yes, acknowledging a little bit fine tuning would be acknowledging what I'm doing when I'm doing it. Because you want to keep reminding yourself you're the locus of control for all that.
Yeah,
And
I think about in parallel, and this is similar, but maybe reinforcing what you're saying. I used to be an anxious person,
mhm.
and I went through a lot of work on myself to stop, like, having that anxiety, and
Yeah,
and
good for
and
you.
basically what happened was I started recognizing the moments when I would start to feel anxious, and I was able to stop them before they could take over. And this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
maybe what you're saying is you can probably apply that same type of thought process to other areas of your life where you're maybe not performing at your best.
Yeah, the only thing I'm adding to that, Michael, is instead of and I certainly don't wanna take away the tool that you've got for switching to another channel, but by the same token, the main thing is to really notice what you're doing and accentuate the physical part of it, just for 30 seconds or a minute, but really intensify it, and that really kicks into play, that theory of change. Then the change becomes from the inside out. It's not just a new agreement about how you'll be.
It's interesting you're saying all this now because you're getting me thinking about just when I was younger. And when I was young, I used to be, I was known to have a temper. And when I got older, that temper definitely didn't serve me. Like, it
Right.
manifests in bad ways, fights or stupid things. I haven't had that, I don't think, in a long time. I kind of was able to figure out that part. I noticed the feelings that would start to happen before I would have some kind of burst. I mean, now I'm well into my 30s, so I haven't had it, but I start like in a way, like, I remember when it stopped for me was when I noticed the moments of when it was about to happen. I was able to be like, "Nope, not gonna happen." Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
I'm just, like, going back through my life now
Yeah,
and thinking
You
about
did a
this.
little of taming your gremlin without knowing that you
exactly.
were taming your gremlin.
Yeah. I mean, really,
Maybe subconsciously.
it's the process, yeah,
But
for
what you're
doing
saying is that people like, this is not just it's not just anxiety or depression or anger or this. This is everywhere. And you can start to know you have to start paying attention and noticing it when it's happening.
and shine a bright, bright, bright light on it. That's why I say accentuate it
I do the opposite. I bury it under the rug
until now.
until now.
Well, let's do a
Yeah.
little let's do a little
Uh-oh.
Her turn.
let's do a little work with that.
I'm like the
Don't
animal that's
stop,
that's sitting
stop.
in the chair with a fire everywhere saying it's fine.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna accept, I am or I'm like,
Okay.
because it's just until now.
Okay.
So you gotta practice saying, "Until now, my tendency has been" and tell Michael,
Until now, my tendency has been to bury things under the rug.
space between those words, please.
Until
Mike
now, Michael, until now, my tendency has been to bury things under the rug.
Yeah.
Under the house kind of, but
under the house, in the
Uh-huh.
graveyard.
So what do you want to do?
I want to acknowledge the issue when it comes up instead of burying it under the rug.
Can you handle it, Michael?
He's ready.
we got to get a big, the rug's pretty big.
You can see that I'm burying things under the rug and he's taking it out under the rug and delivering it to me.
Well, in a lot of ways, I think,
Until now.
Until now.
I think Lauren and I are matched in a lot of ways because we're aligned in principle and, character and all that, and the things that we want out of life, but we're very different, right?
Uh-huh.
Mine is, let's hit it in the nose. Hers is, let's put it under the rug.
Uh-huh.
And mine's maybe sometimes too forceful and hers is sometimes too subtle, right? Does that make sense?
Sure. It makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Until now, though.
Until now. No.
Yeah.
I feel
That's
like we're
the
going to say
thing.
until now, though, a
Yeah,
lot.
because every time you make a definitive statement about how you are, if I'm hearing it, I know it's playing through your head unconsciously, probably 100 times a day. And it's been happening for your 30 some odd years. So you've been hypnotized. Well, you can decide to be different, but that's not going to break that hypnotic message. But you start really witnessing it and accentuating it, there's a definite change that starts to occur. Really.
What about guilt? A lot of women experience guilt. There's a lot of women that are listening. I experience it with I work just as much as my husband and I have a daughter and I experience having mom guilt. And I know that there's a lot of women that experience that.
Oh, man.
I mean, I just feel like one of the main emotions as a mother is guilt. How do you deal with that?
Well, there's this thing called regret. Okay. If I step on your toe or if I stub my own, I'm going to feel regret. That's a natural human emotion and it's just dandy. But if what I do with that is start to assault my own character and basically saying, what's the hell? Did you hear what Lauren just did? She made a definitive statement about what she does. That's hypnotic. In the master class, I called it a hypnotic pre-conviction, HPC, they say. I don't know where you got it, Lauren, maybe from your own mom. Doesn't matter where it came from. Your job is to start noticing the difference between regret, a natural sensation, and guilt. And the primary thing to observe is how long that feeling lasts. Guilt is a poison. I don't mean that. That's not a metaphor. It's a poison in your body. You start noticing where you experience guilt. It's in the upper part of your abdomen, lower part of your stomach. It's a poison. So you don't have to try to change it, Lauren, but I would hope you would really notice when you're doing that to yourself. It's all you got to do and accentuate what it feels like in your body, okay, for 30 seconds or a minute. And then to release it, exhale hard through your mouth. Actually blow like you're blowing out the poison, like, and when you inhale, think in terms of oxygenating, aerating that tightness. Okay. And if some cases you'll experience the tightness all over, same thing. And then do that a few times. Just play with it. You're not stuck feeling bad.
What are some tools that you use other than these tools that you've given us in your own toolbox? For instance, are you into meditation? Are you?
Oh, absolutely.
Tell us
Sure.
some tools. I feel like you probably have a lot that you've collected over 50 years.
Well, let me give you let me give you at least 4, okay? Because I know our time is somewhat limited. I call them the basics of pleasure. There's actually 6 of these, and I don't know if we'll get to all of them. But number 1 is to make feeling simple peace and contentment your number 1 priority, other than survival.
It's a great tip.
Yeah. Your number 1 priority, place reminders around that that's what you want. This is where most people break down. The second one, this is where most people don't get it, is to have that, to feel simple peace and contentment is primarily, not exclusively, we were talking about this earlier, is primarily an inside job. It happens from your skin in. That's why I emphasized at the beginning, pay attention to the surface of your skin. So I want to feel at peace, simple contentment. The beautiful thing, Lauren, is you don't have to create peace and contentment. It's the one experience that's already in there. It already exists. All you have to do is get out of the way of whatever you're putting through it.
And a lot of people are looking for outside things to fix it, whether it's drugs, alcohol, people.
I would say about 7.5 billion. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Because we just think about little kids crawling around on the floor, somebody shaking a rattle or a balloon saying, come get it. That's not bad. But, that's what I was saying earlier. We're good at moving our props and players around, and into circumstances we enjoy. Pretty good at it. But underneath, there's a whole other thing going on.
So are people lacking introspection?
They're lacking awareness.
Awareness.
Yeah, which is different. Remember, introspection is an intellectual process. It's valuable. It's real valuable for some people. But simply noticing, when I wrote Taming Your Gremlin, I needed to come up with a term to describe the experience. And I thought, well, it's simply noticing. The whole thing about mindfulness and all that, the Buddhist movement had not really come to the West. So I called it simply noticing. But that's the key, is to notice. So in terms of tools, I want to feel simple peace. It's got to be a priority. It's primarily, not exclusively, an inner game. That inner game, that inside job begins with actually experiencing where you end and everything else begins on this physical plane. Everything else. Your skin. Fourth one is breathe, damn it, breathe. Remembering that your breathing is not just a regulator of your inner experience. I'm doing this because your belly goes out when it's not just a regulator of your inner experience. It is an indicator. So pay close attention to your breathing. It's probably really tough for you right now. I mean, being in your
I
condition.
can't breathe. I can't drink. I can't go in the sauna. I can't bend over in any
Oh,
way.
man. I really appreciate you showing up to do this. I mean it. Yeah.
What are
Uh,
the other two?
the fifth one,
Yeah.
the way I put it in the books, is relax your pact to keep your act intact. So let me explain.
Hmm.
So think of that thing that's on the inside that feels fine. Soul, prana, ray, chi, ki, all those things. As I said, you can't circle it with a word. Picture it as the proverbial heart symbol. The proverbial heart symbol. Just picture it. Wrapped around that is a whole layer of beliefs you have about who you are. You've got beliefs about how lovable you are, how likable you are, how creative you are, how athletic you are. Beliefs, concepts. Those beliefs, even the good ones, are just opinions
Yeah.
that you developed loyalty to. So there's your heart of hearts. Then there's all those opinions you have. Based on those opinions, you form another layer. Your act, your advertising, your style of being. You can get clothes to go with your act. You can get cars or houses or whatever to go with your act. Don't hear act as a negative thing. It's your persona. So what the method is about is cleansing the channel between who you really are on the inside and that outer ring, that persona. It's about that. So you want to be you're best served when those two things match up.
So, for example, somebody could have an outside persona, say that they've told themselves they grew up and they say, their parents put an emphasis they're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. They grow up, they wear the suit, the tie, they're a lawyer or a doctor, but that's really not who they are on the inside. And this persona has overtaken who they really are.
Happens all the time.
Yep.
And the opposite can happen. If that second layer, those concepts, those opinions about yourself, you don't like them, then your persona, you'll develop a counteract, an opposite thing. Think about the number of guys you've known, I imagine, and I have too, who develop a really macho persona because on the inside they feel weak, they feel scared.
That's so funny. I was just reading a book about this, about if you're hyper masculine or hyper feminine, there's usually a different side to the coin of that you're like overcompensating.
R Many times. So the idea is not to get rid of the whatever the beauty or the masculine side at all. It's just to expand your repertoire,
Right.
to say, "Hey, there's something else beautiful happening, you know, inside."
And
And
what's number 6?
we covered it actually. It's establish the here and now, here and here as your home base, okay? And come home several times an hour from that home base to consciously, with choice, direct your spotlight of awareness.
A lot of people are using their phone to tap out of that. Have you noticed?
Hell yeah, I've noticed. Because in terms of the difference between experience and actual knowledge, information and knowledge, I see so many people that know about life. They know about it. I tell you, this is again in the 70s. I was at a place called Esalen, and there were people running around naked and playing flutes, and then the Big Sur. It's beautiful. And I never forget this. There was a guy walking around, and every time I saw him, it's beautiful there. He's reading a book on awareness. Okay. So,
It's like a
it's
meme.
like going into a restaurant and really being hungry and reading the menu
Right.
and then getting up and leaving. You know, I mean, so anyway, the 6th one is establish the here and now as your home base. Home base, not be here now all the time. Come home often, here and here, several times an hour.
You are incredible. I
Well, thank
have
you.
your book. It's called Taming Your Gremlin, a surprisingly simple method for getting out of your own way. I think everyone could benefit from this book.
Well, thank you.
Tell us where we can find this book. I know it's available on Amazon bookstores. Give us all the details and tell us where we can find you.
Well, you can find me at tamingyourgremlin.com, actually. And also, there's a course. It's not going to begin until January, and it's not on the website or anything. But if people have a sincere interest in learning the method, I'm going to start it mid-January. So they can contact me through support at tamingyourgremlin.com.
You know your shit, Rick. I mean, I picked up a lot of tips from this episode.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this. Yeah,
Thank you
appreciate you.
very, very much. Yeah.